Welcome all of you to our next in our series of JETI talks. I'm glad you're all here. And this talk will be about the Jewish calendar, how it came to be our calendar, and sort of the history of it. And some of you may have already heard this talk. You might remember, some of you might have come back in 2016 when I gave this talk at the Truity Planetarium in Mystic Seaport. Some of you might have attended, I gave the talk there. You might remember we had dinner beforehand at the Latitude 41, then we all walked over to the planetarium where I gave this talk. So it might be familiar to some of you. Hopefully, if you've heard it before, it'll be a refresher for you. I hope so. So let me begin, and I'm going to share my screen, and I'll start my talk. Okay. Now you'll notice on the right side of the screen you could see 4 windows with pictures in it. If you'd like to minimize that so you can see the entire slide, there's a little what looks like an underscore, the upper left hand corner of your window there. If you click on that little underscore, it'll take away all those windows and it'll just have me talking. You'll just see me talking there. So that'll give you a chance to see all those slides without those other windows in there. Okay, so I'm going to begin. All right. As we look into our evening sky, we can look into the history of astronomical knowledge and see its effect on regulating our lives with the passage of time. The motions of the heavenly bodies were soon found to be very precise and an excellent basis for such a regulation. The Earth seemed to rotate under the stars once every 23 hours and 56 minutes, giving us one sidereal day, which means one day with respect to the background stars. A more specific star, our sun, could also be used in this manner. But because the Earth moved around the sun, the day with respect to the sun was 4 minutes longer than a day when compared to the background stars. Since daily life was more dependent on the sun's light rather than that of the stars, the method of using the sun was adopted to establish our regular day. The Earth not only rotated on its axis, but revolved around the sun. And on a larger scale, humankind could think of one revolution as 1 year. However, since this year was about 1/4 day over 365 days, there needed to be a simple stipulation made of an added day to the year every 4 years, which is our present system of leap years. This method kept the seasons in accord with the calendar over a fairly long period of time. And with the exception of February, the months and weeks could be statically defined subdivisions of the solar year. One more body in our celestial system was so prominent that many people would use it instead of the sun. The moon displayed regular phases and cycles and often was connected with shepherding and agricultural tasks, allowing with its full light the extension of such tasks beyond sundown. It was an object of special interest because of its surface features, changing shapes and seemingly fast movement with respect to the background stars. As a summary then, our present civil calendar day of 24 hours is based on the rotation of the Earth on its axis with respect to the sun. Its year uses as a basis the revolution of the Earth around the sun. Its weeks and months are regular subdivisions identically repeated from year to year with the exception of February during leap year. Many reforms have been instituted over the centuries, major ones by Julius Caesar in 46 BCE and Pope Gregory XIII in 1582 to make the accumulation of the calendar years agree with the solar calendar year over a large span of time. The Jewish calendar is partially based on the rotation and revolution of the earth with two added stipulations. First, each month has 29 or 30 days based on the period from one new moon to the next, which is about 29 and a half days. Second, the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, may not fall on the day before or after the Sabbath. The addition of these stipulations, which will be explained in detail later, results in 6 different lengths of years ranging from 353 days to 385 days. The origin of the Jewish calendar was discovered at Gezer, a small town northwest of Jerusalem, in the form of a farmer's calendar. The succession of months was based on agricultural tasks such as harvesting crops, pruning of vines, and gathering of fruits. The beginning of the agricultural year was in the fall, since Sukkot, the Feast of Ingathering, which this year starts on the evening of October 2nd, was to occur at the end of the year, according to Exodus. In this Israelite calendar, the months began with the new moon, observed by a 2-day fast. However, after 12 such months, accumulating 354 days, 11 more days had to be added to the calendar to make it agree with the 365-day solar year. It is uncertain how this was done until the 8th century BCE, when King Hezekiah added a month every 2 to 3 years to make up this discrepancy. An alternative way of equalizing the year is explained in Ezekiel by adding 10 or 11 days every year. The names of the Jewish months were adopted after the exile of the Jews into Babylon in 586 BCE. The Babylonian month names varied according to period and locality, but cosmological ideas were definitely influential. Chaldea, across the Euphrates River from Babylon, was the native soil of astrology, humankind's early study of the stars. Therefore, it is likely that the origin of the Babylonian astronomical calendar was in this Chaldean region to the west, not in Babylon proper. The first 2 months, Nisan and Iyar, represented the highest gods and the first man created by the Lord of mankind. The remaining months were assigned to planets and zodiacal signs from Gemini to Sagittarius. For example, Sivan was the month of the heavenly twins Gemini. Tammuz followed with its significance in Cancer. Elul was named after Ishtar, the planet Venus, or Virgo of the zodiac. Tishrei represented the altar of incense seen in the sky as the constellation of Libra, the scales. The deities of the month Cheshvan and Kislev were the 2 largest planets, Jupiter and Saturn. The remaining months referred to the deluge, since their signs occupied the water region of the sky. Capricorn, the sea goat, Aquarius, the water carrier, and Pisces, the fishes. During one Reformation, the Semitic renderings of the Babylon names were replaced with numbers, and the beginning of the year was in the spring. However, by the end of the period of the Second Temple, the months had resumed their names. After the 3rd century, in 363 CE, necessary changes were made in establishing the month. Up until this time, the first day of the month had been determined by the actual observation of the new crescent moon. On the 30th day of the month, the patriarch, or Naseh, and his court in Palestine received the testimony of witnesses that they had seen the new moon. This new moon was considered, not in the astronomical sense, of no moon disk seen at all, but in the sense of the first crescent visible after the moon had passed between the sun and the earth. If this thin crescent had been observed by 2 witnesses, the beginning of the month, Rosh Chodesh, was considered to be that day. If there were no witnesses, the new moon, and therefore the first of the month, was established as occurring on the day following the 30th. To inform the surrounding villages, fire signals were lit on hilltops at the beginning of the month. Since the beginning of the month, Rosh Chodesh, had to be celebrated, those who couldn't see these fires celebrated both the 30th day and the day following to be sure to cover the correct day. As can be imagined, several problems occurred with this procedure. In the event that the sky was cloudy, the moon would not be visible. Sometimes overzealous witnesses imagined new moons or maliciously proclaimed the sighting of the moon. This prompted leaders to study astronomy so they could calculate the actual occurrence of the new moon. The Nasei had the prerogative of determining the calculations, and they held these secret until the year 359, at which time calculating rules were published by Hillel II, thereby stabilizing the Jewish calendar. Until the 3rd century, the calendar had been reckoned from historical events. However, since then, the traditional date of creation, 3761 BCE, has been used as the starting date. In 2020, therefore, starting with Rosh Hashanah, New Year's, the Jewish year is 3761 plus 2020, or 5781. The Bible states that the evening and the morning are the first day. Therefore, the Jewish day begins at sunset. The length of the day for any one observer on Earth will vary slightly, since the sunset time changes each day. During certain parts of the year for higher latitudes, inside the Arctic or Antarctic circles, for example, the sun never goes below the horizon or never rises for periods varying from 24 hours to 6 months. In these cases, the day is counted from midday or midnight, whichever the case may be. The Jewish holidays do not coincide with the same solar calendar dates each year, since each lunar month is generally shorter than a Gregorian calendar month, and a Jewish year never has 365 or 366 days, as does our regular solar calendar year. To keep the Jewish calendar year in step with the seasons, intercalation, or adding, had to be done to the original Babylonian calendar. This was first done in an organized way in 430 BCE by Meton of Athens, who was a Greek mathematician and astronomer. In a 19-year cycle, 12 of these years are considered common years, containing 12 months each. Depending on the month lengths, these lunar years could be 353, 354, or 355 days. Interspersed among the common years of the cycle, now to be specific, on the 3rd, 6th, 8th, 9th, 11th, 14th, 17th, and 19th year, a month was added after Adar called Adar Shenei, or second Adar. And these leap years contained 383, 384, or 385 days. By this method, the 19-year Metonic cycle keeps the Jewish calendar in step with the seasons and Gregorian calendar over a large span of time. Now, it may seem odd that in such a regulated system with a repetitive lunar cycle, certain months such as Kislev, Cheshvan, and Adar vary from 29 to 30 days. However, there is one dominating stipulation: holidays. Yom Kippur must never fall on Friday or Sunday, since a meal must be served both before and after this holiday. By Jewish tradition, no cooking can be done on Saturday, the Sabbath. Kislev came to be known as the defective month, for if a day needed to be eliminated from the calendar to take into account the holiday's occurrence, it was taken from Kislev. By the same token, a day was added to Cheshvan when necessary, labeling this the perfect month. As a very general rule, then, it can be remembered that no year ever has fewer than 4 or more than 8 months of 30 days each. The Jewish holidays can be categorized in origin as nature and/or religious days. The leading festivals of Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot were originally nature festivals, Pesach and Shavuot in the spring and Sukkot in the fall. Since Pesach and Sukkot are celebrated on the 15th of Nisan and Tishrei, respectively, the occurrence of a full moon mid-cycle phase would always be characteristic. In ancient times, before the Babylonian exile, the Jewish people had been shepherds. Their festivals were in keeping with the nomadic way of life. For example, Pesach had its origin when the Jews were wandering desert tribes. They would graze their flocks whenever they could find pasturage. In the spring months, when the kids and lambs were born, the Jews observed a festival at full moon, featured by the sacrifice of a sheep or a goat from the flock. The animal was roasted whole and eaten at night, to be completely finished by daybreak. Similar nomadic festivals would include those of the new moon and of the shearing of sheep. In latter days, the Jews ceased their wanderings and settled in Palestine, tilling the soil. Soon they associated festivals with these agricultural tasks, such as the Feast of Harvest or Shavuot. From Pesach to Shavuot, there was a 7-week period during which all the grains from barley to wheat would be harvested. The autumn festival Sukkot celebrated the ingathering, the storing away of the produce of the field and orchard. A third development in the festivals came when the ceremonies and rites took on new meaning and were given symbolic values. As Jewish culture became more highly spiritual, the idea of observing nature and harvest festivals lost its appeal. In this light, the Jewish people began to observe the 7 days of Pesach as a major spring festival in commemoration of the Exodus from Egypt, which festival took place originally in the first spring month of the year. During the first night of Pesach or Passover, a festival meal or Seder is held with special food rituals. Each indentation in this plate would hold a particular symbolic food, and at this time, the Haggadah is read, telling again the history of the Exodus. Sukkot also parted somewhat from the agricultural aspect, as the Jews strove to relate this festival to some part of their ancient history. They therefore connected Sukkot with the nomadic tribes dwelling in tents, or Sukkot, during their march throughout the desert. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are different. They have always been profoundly solemn days and bear no relation to any historical event in the Jewish past. They are termed days of awe, being associated with a sense of moral responsibility. The date and event marking the official beginning of the calendar year has varied by country and period in time. The Babylonians began their year in the spring, the Egyptians in the summer with the rise of the Nile, the Palestinians in the fall, and the Romans in the winter. In the United States, before 1752, the year began on the 25th of March. For the Jews, the Bible stated that the Feast of Ingathering was at the end of the year. All the produce was gathered in, and new growth and life were beginning. However, also in Exodus, the Bible states that the Jews did begin the year in the fall in the past, but after the exile, they were influenced by the Babylonian spring new year. So the calendar begins at Nisan, but the Jewish New Year celebration continues to be observed in the fall on the 1st of Tishrei, the beginning of the 7th month of the year. A ram's horn or shofar is blown then to call for spiritual awakening. Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement, the 10th of Tishrei, is the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, devoted entirely to fasting, prayer, and meditation. It was on the 10th of Tishrei that the Israelites received the second tablets of the law. This year, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot begin on the evening of September 18, September 27, and October 2, respectively. Hanukkah, which this year begins on December 10th, is an 8-day holiday commemorating the victory of Judas Maccabeus in 165 BCE over the Greco-Syrian king who had tried to abolish the Jewish faith. One candle of an 8-candle menorah or candelabra is lit the first night of Hanukkah, and one candle is added each night until all 8 are burning on the last night. It reminds us of the cruse of oil which burned for 8 days when the temple was restored. This is also similar to the lighting of fires in the earlier days to notify neighboring towns of the first day of each month, Rosh Chodesh. In conclusion, we have seen how a calendar reflects the life of the people who formulated it. Being a nomadic people, the Hebrews adopted a lunar calendar, as the moon was easier for them to observe without fixed astronomical instruments. When they became agricultural, they felt the need to link their system in with the solar or seasonal year. Had the Hebrews been agricultural originally, they probably would have developed a solar calendar in the first place, as did the Egyptians. As we gaze at our evening sky, may we have a deeper appreciation for the early relations of the celestial bodies to our basic written large-scale reckoner of time, the calendar. We can realize how important it was that the Hebrews followed the heavens thousands of years ago. And we see in the first part of the opening prayer of the Ma'ariv, the evening service, how influential the heavens still are to the Jewish people today. Praised are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, whose word brings the evening dusk. You open the gates of dawn with wisdom, change the day's divisions with understanding, set the succession of seasons, and arrange the stars in the sky according to your will. You create day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness away from light. Eternal God, your rule shall embrace us forever. Praised are you, Lord, for each evening's dusk. Well, I hope you enjoyed that presentation, and I'm glad you all came to see it. So thank you all for coming. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them. I think if you'd like to speak, please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Bruce.
Very interesting.
You're quite welcome. My pleasure.
You know,
Whoops. What happened?
Go ahead, Richie.
I had interesting. You know, when you talk about the exile, I had read an interesting discussion that the rules regarding Sukkot are varied in terms of their time historically, and that specifically some of the laws were written during the exile. Specifically, the willow, which is part of the lulav, is a Babylonian crop. And furthermore, there was Jacob Milgram, for example, had written about how he believes that the appearance of the booth, you might say, for Sukkot arose during the exile because people came to visit Jerusalem to observe the holiday, and effectively they couldn't get a hotel room. So they built these things on hills all over Jerusalem and to live in. They built their own tents, basically. And this is the origin of the requirement to be in booths during Sukkot, during the exile.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for filling that in, Richie. Yeah. Anybody else? Anybody else have a, go ahead, Gaby.
Yes, I have a question which I'm sure you're able to answer. When did people really construct the idea of having a year being 365 days? Do they go by the let's say early evenings in the winter time and later days in the summertime and divide up the year that way? How did they fix on that construct of a whole year?
Years ago, people were much more observant of the night sky. Today, we really don't take much notice of it at all. You know, but years ago, people did. And they noticed during the year, they would see different stars at different times of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And they would notice that during the spring, there'd be certain stars up in the sky, and they'd say, oh, well, this is our time we usually plant. This is our time of planting. And they noticed in the fall, there'd be different stars in the sky. They didn't realize the Earth, I think, was revolving around the sun. They didn't know that, but they saw the sky changing. They thought the sky was revolving around the Earth. They didn't realize the Earth was moving. You know, you can imagine that doesn't feel like the Earth is moving. So people were very observant, and they saw different times of year. We'd see different stars in the sky, and they noticed that every 365 days or so, same pattern was in the sky all over again. So that concept of the year came from people's observations. I would guess that's that would be the answer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Bruce?
Yeah. Yes.
I think you said, if I remember, you said that they added a day to Cheshvan and took away a day from Kislev.
Right.
What happens? Did they ever put it back to Cheshvan and take away from Kislev? I mean, the reverse?
No, I don't know exactly, but it's my guess they did that to make the years fall into sync. So if they needed to add a year, if they needed to add a day, they would add it to let's see,
Kislev.
Yeah, the Kislev, and if they needed to take away a day, they took it away from Cheshvan. So
That
those,
was
yeah, so
that was very interesting. I had never known that.
yeah, yes, yeah, yes.
So I was wondering, are there any other calendars where people observe the day starting at the at sundown and sun up? Is there any other culture that does that?
You know, I'm very interested in doing a talk about the Muslim calendar, and I think I think they observe it. I think they observe the same things that we, the same
Could
time.
they start in the evening?
Start in the evening.
Huh.
Yes.
The Muslims, sorry, the Muslims don't correct it though, like we do. So the holidays move around. Sometimes they're in the summer, sometimes they're in the winter. And actually, because the years are shorter, when someone says they're like 65, they're actually a little younger because they don't correct it.
Ah, okay. Yes. Yeah. I think I remember reading that somewhere. Yeah. So their calendar shifts around the year, whereas our calendar, we try to keep it in somewhat of a sync.
Mhm.
Yes, Katie.
Yeah, I'm back again. I'm thinking in terms of archaeology. Do you happen to know where there's some of the earliest stone engravings that would indicate something about the various months and names applied to the months?
I don't, but the earliest reference I have to a calendar is at Gezer. It was this the earliest reference was in Gezer. I don't remember the year now. I got to go back in my notes. It was I can't find it. Yeah, but I don't know when things would have been marked on stones and things like that. I don't know. Yeah. Now I just want to let you know. I know there's still some time. It's only 3 minutes after 7 right now, and I know these talks usually go on a bit longer. This one was shorter because this is a program that I had put together several years ago, so it had a specific length. If any of you are interested, I can put up a planetarium program. I could share a screen with a planetarium program if you'd like, and we could take a look at what's in tonight's sky. If you'd like to do that, if you'd like to,
Yeah.
I don't want to
Oh,
keep
yeah,
everybody
go
here.
ahead.
Yeah, I'd love
Yes.
it.
You want
Yes.
to play that? Okay, let me minimize my screen for a moment, and let me try to get this program up here. Just takes a second. And I'll share my screen. Let me, okay. Okay, I think this will work now. Let me try this. Okay, I'm going to try sharing my screen again. I hope this program will be there. Oh, I think it is. Okay, good. Okay, good. So this is a planetarium program I have on my computer. It's a free program. As you can see, it's called Stellarium. It's absolutely free. You can download it, and it's a marvelous program because you can see what's in the sky any night of the year. You could go back thousands of years. You could go ahead thousands of years. You could see what's going to be there thousands of years from now, or on your birthday next year, that kind of thing. When you were born, you could take a look at the night sky when you were born. And so this is a wonderful program. It's called Stellarium. And what we're looking at right now, let me show you, there's a time over here. Look at the bottom. I have it set for 2000, which means 8 o'clock. So this is the sky as we'd see it tonight at 8 o'clock. Plus 44 seconds over there. And if we look toward the north, you can see in the bottom of the screen, we can see the compass direction. We're looking toward the north right now, looking toward the north. And tonight at 8 o'clock, if it were clear, I think it's going to be cloudy tonight, so we're not going to see these things. But if you look toward the north, you're going to notice there are 7 stars fairly close to the horizon. These 7, you see them here.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody know the name of that group of stars? What is that group of stars? Anybody know?
That's the Dipper?
That's the Dipper. That's the Big Dipper.
Mm-hmm.
Those 7 stars are called the Big Dipper. they're a very prominent group of stars, although right now in the early evening, they're getting closer to the horizon. So you might have difficulty seeing them if you're in an area where there are some trees around you, for example. You might not see them if there are trees to the north of you. But they're there. They're very prominent. So there are 7 stars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the Big Dipper. And let me and the Big Dipper is part of a group of stars called the Big Bear. The Big Dipper is within a constellation called the Big Bear. So I'm just going to connect these dots. I'm going to click on one of the stars, just going to click on one of them. And I'm going to take that click away. And then I'm going to come down here to this constellation lines. And there we can see those stars that make up the Big Bear. Right? And you can kind of see a rough outline of a big bear. He's got a long tail. I know bears don't have tails like that, but he's got a long tail. And I could even show you an outline of him also. Let's take a look. There's the Big Bear, as the ancients might have seen him so many years ago when they looked up at the night sky. But we could use this Big Dipper to find a very important star in the sky for sailors and for people who are interested in finding their compass direction. Anybody know the name of that star?
The North Star?
North Star.
Good, the North Star, perfect. And the way to find the North Star is we use these 2 stars in the Big Dipper's cup, the stars furthest from the handle. These 2 are called the pointers, because if you draw a line through them and just extend that line out in the sky, those 2 stars are going to point you, the next bright star you come to, that is the North Star, or Polaris. You see up here in the upper left-hand corner, have a little bit of information about it. It's pretty far away from us. It's 432 light years away, very, very far away. A light year is the distance that light travels in 1 year. Light will travel in 1 year a distance of nearly 6 trillion miles, 6 trillion, that's with a T. And that star is 432 light years away. So if you multiply 432 by 6 trillion, you get an idea of how many miles away Polaris is from us. Very, very far away. And as you can see, I'll take that. Polaris is part of the Little Dipper. It's at the end of the handle of the Little Dipper. These 7 stars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, also in the Little Dipper, just as the Big Dipper has 7 stars, Little Dipper also has 7 stars. And the Little Dipper is part of the Little Bear. I'll show you a picture of him. And there's that Little Bear. So kind of interesting to see him. You know, the ancients with their vivid imaginations, let me bring them in a little bit closer. I could sort of zoom in a bit. So the ancients with their vivid imaginations, they saw this little bear in the sky. Somehow they saw him. Takes me 3 or 4 martinis before I start seeing that little bear up there, but little joke. Very little one. Okay. So you can see how we could use the stars to kind of star hop to find different things. We used the 2 stars in the Big Dipper's cup to find the North Star and the Little Dipper and the Little Bear. And notice how the Big Dipper's handle makes this arc. See how it kind of arcs a bit? Mm-hmm. So if we follow this arc across the sky, it's going to lead us to a bright star called Arcturus. I'm going to take the lines away for a moment. This star is called Arcturus. I'm going to click on it. You see the name Arcturus. And again, following the arc of the Big Dipper's handle, arc to Arcturus. Arcturus is a bright yellow star. It's easy to find because it's quite bright. It's part of a constellation called Boötes, the herdsman. Let me show you the outline of Boötes. I'll click over here. We'll see the outline. There's the outline. It looks like an ice cream cone. If you think of this as the cone, I'm sorry, the ice cream, and this connecting these dots, you might have a cone over here. We take that star away, but filling in the details, we get Boötes, the herdsman. So he's also in our night sky tonight. He'll be there tomorrow night as well. Now, some of you might also be familiar with a constellation called Cassiopeia. Many of you might have heard of Cassiopeia, and you could use the Big Dipper to help you find Cassiopeia. Let me take these away again, once again. Take these away. And we're going to use, to find Cassiopeia, we're going to use, here's the 7 stars in the Big Dipper. We're going to use the 4th star. Count in 4 from either end, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, come to that same star. And now we're going to draw a line from that 4th star to the North Star. We found the North Star, we know where it is now. We could draw a line from that star across to the North Star and just extend that line, keep it going. And when we do, we're going to come to this group of stars over here that sort of looks like a W, sort of a stretched out W over here. Well, that's the constellation of Cassiopeia. I'm going to click on one of the stars. I'll take away that click again, and I'll come down here again to our outlines of the constellations. And you can see there's Cassiopeia. Let me put her picture up there. You'll see what she looks like. Queen Cassiopeia. She's a very vain lady. She's got a mirror. She's always looking in her mirror there in the sky. There's Cassiopeia. And so, because we're sort of running out of time, I want to move around toward the south. So I'm just going to drag the sky along here. We're going to reverse our position, looking toward the south. And tonight, or tomorrow night, if you go out and look in the sky, you're going to find Jupiter and Saturn in the south. I'm going to zoom in a bit, make it a little bit bigger. So Jupiter and Saturn are there. Jupiter is extraordinarily bright. It's really easy to find it because it's so bright. And if I click on Jupiter, oops, let me take away those lines again. That's Sagittarius. Jupiter is within Sagittarius. Let me take that away. We could talk about that in a second. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to zoom in to Jupiter. I wanted to center it and zoom in. And let's take a look at Jupiter. We could zoom in all the way to Jupiter on this program. It's a wonderful program, again. And Jupiter has moons that orbit it. The largest moons are Europa and Io and Ganymede, and I think Callisto. Callisto, I think right now is behind Jupiter. That's why we can't see it. Callisto is actually behind the planet right now, so we can't see it. But these are the 4 Galilean moons. They're the largest moons that orbit around Jupiter. And Galileo was the discoverer of those moons. He looked through his telescope for the first time, looked at Jupiter, and he spotted those 4 moons. And today we call them the Galilean moons to honor Galileo for having discovered them. So the 4 largest moons are the Galilean moons. Oh, there's Callisto, excuse me. Callisto is way out there to the side. I didn't see it. I thought it might have been behind Jupiter, but it's not. It's way out to the side. So there's Callisto. And if we zoom back out again, I'm going to zoom out again so we can take a look at Saturn in the sky. So we'll go back up to our horizon. Again, let's take a look at Saturn. I'll click on Saturn and I'll center it using this little centering tool in the bottom of the page. And I'll zoom in using my mouse wheel. We'll zoom into Saturn, take a look at Saturn. Saturn too has many, many moons. The largest moon is Titan. Saturn has, I think, 68 moons. Has a lot of moons, but Titan is the largest one by far. And you can see some of the other moons that are orbiting around Saturn, the beautiful ring system. And by the way, these moons right now in this program are in their correct position. Stellarium will correctly place these moons in their position around the planet. So again, it's a free program. You could. I'm not trying to sell it to you. I'm not. But it is a free program. If you have any interest in the night sky, it's a fantastic program to explore, to do some exploring. So let me take away Saturn again. We'll do that. And so anyway, so I know it's getting to be a little bit later now, and let me stop sharing. So we can, if you had any questions, again, I'd be happy to to answer any questions you might have about the night sky. Go ahead, Dan.
Just how do you spell the program, Bruce?
STELLARIUM. Go to stellarium.org, O-R-G, and you could download this free program. It's fantastic.
T. You said STELLARIUM?
Correct.
Thank you.
So
Bruce?
Bruce, did you take classes in college on this, or are you just totally self-taught when it comes to this?
Well, when I retired from my career as a stenographer, I went to Mystic Seaport to volunteer. And I went into the planetarium. Astronomy, I loved astronomy as a kid. I just loved it. And when I walked into the planetarium, I knew this is where I wanted to volunteer. And it was through working in the planetarium that I learned much more about the night sky. I also audited at Connecticut College. I audited 2 classes from the astronomy professor there at Connecticut College. I had a chance to do that. So I learned a lot more about the sky, and all my work at the planetarium, all my reading. I learned a lot more than the average person, let's say, but not as much as a professional astronomer. But I learned a lot about the night sky. I love it. I love to talk about it. And it's just a love that I have, and I love to share it with people. So I'm basically self-taught, but I did go to school to audit some classes at Connecticut College.
It's very
Yes.
inspiring that you were able to acquire all that knowledge
Mhm.
after retirement.
Yeah,
It's a lot of fun.
it's wonderful. Uh,
Yes, Katie.
Another question from me. I've always been absolutely amazed by the fact that these stars are so far away. You mentioned the light years, and yet we see them. How is it the case that they are so bright and so visible to us at such a tremendous distance?
Well, the fact is, stars are very, very bright, and they're very, very big. The nearest star to us is the sun, right?
Mhm.
That's a star. The sun's a star, and it's 93 million miles away.
Woohoo.
93 million miles away on average. So, and it's really bright because it's so close to us, and it's big. It's about 850,000 miles in diameter. It's very big. The Earth is about 8,000 miles in diameter. So the sun is huge. And the sun is a relatively small star.
Hmm.
Other stars we see in the sky are absolutely huge. If I give you an example, there's one star called Betelgeuse. You might have heard of Betelgeuse. It's kind of a funny name. That star is so big that if we put that star in the center of the solar system in place of our sun, the outer edge of Betelgeuse would go all the way out to the planet Jupiter. That's how big it is. Jupiter is about 450 million miles away from us. So Betelgeuse is nearly 1 billion miles in diameter. Nearly 1 billion miles in diameter. That's how big that star is. So it's really big. And many, many stars are much bigger than the sun. Because they're so big and they're so bright, that's why we see them. Even though they're so far away, we can still see them.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Dan.
A question, a comment. The stars you've been talking about tonight and the constellations, are they all within the Milky Way galaxy, or are they outside our galaxy?
Every single star you can see in the sky, every one, they're all within the Milky Way. Every star you can see. The only thing we can see outside of the Milky Way with our eyes alone is a galaxy called the Andromeda Galaxy. That galaxy is about 2.5 million light years away. Very, very far.
Wow.
And it's the only thing we can see outside the Milky Way with our eyes alone. Otherwise, you need a telescope to see these things. But yes, every star you can see, they're all within the Milky Way.
Let me just mention, for people who are interested, I'm also interested in it by way of, in astronomy by way of science fiction. But there's a book I read recently. It's very approachable. It's not crushing you with physics knowledge and mathematical knowledge. It's called The Big Bang, The Origin of the Universe, by a guy by the name of Simon Singh. I think he's S-I-N-G-H. I think he's a British astronomer. But it's absolutely fascinating. And I didn't realize, I don't think, till reading it, that till the 1920s, we thought the Milky Way was the entire universe.
Correct.
And now what is it? 400 billion galaxies have been found, or 400 million?
Well, there are the estimate that I get, that I read about, that I see most often, is there are 150 billion galaxies in the entire universe. 150 billion. Okay, and and Edwin Hubble was the man who discovered that the Andromeda galaxy, which we called the Andromeda Nebula many years ago, before we knew it was another galaxy, we called it the Andromeda Nebula. We thought it was part of the Milky Way. But Edwin Hubble looked at a star with his telescope. He saw a star. It's called a Cepheid variable star. It's a special star. There are many of them, but it varies in its brightness and its faintness over a specific period of time. And by knowing its brightness and we know how bright they get, we know exactly how bright they get, we can tell how far an object is from us by looking at its brightness from our perspective on the Earth. So we can figure out how far away that star is, that Cepheid variable. He figured out how far that star was from us. He got it wrong. He was a little bit off in his estimate of distance, but he figured out that star was outside the Milky Way. And the nebula that we thought was the Andromeda Nebula was its own galaxy. So he was the one who discovered that. And that's why the Hubble telescope was named after Edwin Hubble, because of his fantastic discoveries, his fantastic discovery that he made. And he also figured out that the universe, that everything is moving away from us. Things are moving away from us. Now, I think Ella had a question.
Not a question, just a recommendation. I have an app called Star Tracker, and you just point your phone to the sky, and it tells you exactly what is there.
Yes.
Like with the horizon, and star watching has been so much more fun when, I know which one is which, and I don't need to know any astronomy. So anyone who's interested, it's really fun it's like, oh, that's Jupiter and Mars.
Ella, you got to put me out of business.
I doubt it. But it's a lot of fun to just put it on your phone and look at the sky and know exactly what everything is.
What's the app called?
Star Tracker.
Star Tracker. What, tracker or trekker?
Well, with my accent, tracker. You track the stars with an A.
Thank you.
There's a telescope and stars on the icon.
Well, okay, everyone. I see it's about 25 after. I know Rena's here too, and she's going to we're going to go across to the Minion pretty soon. So I want to thank you all for coming to this presentation and to my little talk about astronomy at the end here. It was a lot of fun for me. I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh, yes.
It was really good to see everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Yet
Bruce.
another very interesting and lovely talk. Thank you.
Yes, you've been one of our most popular speakers, so thank you, Bruce.
you're welcome.
That was great.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.